It's Thursday afternoon, 4 p.m. in Central Europe. It's Space Café Scotland time. Our Space Café Scotland by Angela Mathis will begin soon. As always, we really appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback, and we will learn and improve based on your feedback. I am Elena Vocale, event coordinator at SpaceWatch.Global. SpaceWatch.Global is a Europe-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I would like to thank all our private and corporate supporters that showed their commitment to keep our independent journalism alive. We really appreciate that. With Angela Mathis, CEO of ThinkTank Maths, we found a great friend and wonderful host for our outreach in Scotland. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the Space Café podcasts. The latest one features Daniel Leap from the Iceland Space Agency. We also have new exciting episodes of Space Café Radio with Kevin O'Connell in our mini-series from the PSSI conference. So don't miss them. We also keep our fan shop online open for you to support us actively and become a space watcher. If you've missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive on our webpage in the event section, and on YouTube, of course, you'll find us. We will host our Space Café Scotland live regularly, and with that, my job is done, and I'd like to hand over to your host today. Angela, over to you.
Thank you very much, Elena, and a warm welcome to my guests and to everybody who has joined in and those who may watch it later. If you're either joining this today or you're watching it at your leisure, it's because you understand the opportunity that space offers, both economically for investment. It's an opportunity for security and defense, of course, these days also, and that is a factor that we have to bring in. But it's also an unprecedented, well, it's actually unprecedented, no, it's a massive opportunity for humanity to watch what we are doing to the planet in real time and do something about it, to provide irrefutable proof of what is going on so that we can do something about it fast. But it is also a domain where we don't know everything yet. We don't understand all the science, we don't understand all the dynamics of how objects behave there, etc. And so we have to move with cautious steps, do the homework, do the research, and at the same time, make sure that the dynamic and the excitement and the dreams of people of accessing space and using space in all these marvelous ways. And I'm delighted that today, there's been many talks that we've all watched for a number of years now on the issues and the challenges. But what is exciting about today's panel and the people that have agreed to join us here today is that they represent organizations, significant organizations in the world. They have put together strategies. They own those strategies. They have deliverables. They have to report on those. There's transparency, and they have plans. And that's what we want to hear. So I don't want to get in the way of this. I want to hand over. I was part, of course, of the Scottish sustainability roadmap because our company is in Scotland and in Norway, and certainly we're very much involved in the sustainability in space. So I'm going to hand over to our colleagues who. Well, I want everyone to, first of all, what I want to do is I want everyone to introduce themselves first before we go there. I'd like everyone who's on the panel to introduce themselves, just their name and their organization, so that you've already entered into the discussion and you're not sitting silent while you're waiting for other people to deliver their piece. So can I start with Dasha, can you say who you are and your organization, please?
Yes, hello everyone. Hi Angela. So I'm Daria or Dasha. I am from Astra Agency and I'm a Chief Operation Officer there.
Okay, thank you. Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself and your organization, please?
Thanks, Angela. Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Stewart. I'm a Senior Consultant with Optimat.
Thank you. Laurence.
Hi, everyone. Very happy to be with you. I'm Laurence Monnoyer-Smith, and I am Head of Sustainable Development here at the CNES, the French Space Agency.
Thank you. Andrea?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if my camera is working, it's on, but I don't see myself.
No.
I am Andrea Vena, the Chief Climate and Sustainability Officer at the European Space Agency. Nice to be here.
Great. We hope we get your picture back. And Jérôme?
Yes, thank you very much, Angela, and thank you very much for welcoming us in the first place. I'm Jérôme Barbier. I'm head of Outer Space and Digital Affairs at the Paris Peace Forum.
So, the Paris Peace Forum. Brilliant. Good. Right. So now everybody has had, we all know who's here. We have the expectation set. I'm going to ask Ashley and Daria to go through, Scotland published its space sustainability, a roadmap for Scotland from our industry, from the ground up it came. So I'm going to ask them to kick off. I believe, Ashley, you're going to start and take us through some of the key points. This was published in September, but it was also publicised and made more public at Bremen last week. So over to the both of you to tell us what Scotland is doing about sustainability.
Great, thank you, Angela. As Angela said, I'll just give a kind of introduction to the roadmap, put a bit of context to it, and then I'll hand over to Dasha, and Dasha will explain a bit more in detail around the particular work packages and the actions that we've set out within the roadmap. So just firstly, to kick things off with the first slide, in terms of the context and the aims. So Optimat are a strategy consultancy and Asher Agency are a space marketing consultancy. We were appointed and collaborated on this project. So back in 2019, Space Scotland had established an environmental task force, and really what they were looking to do was aiming to kind of better understand the impact of the space industry, both in terms of Earth and low Earth orbit, as part of this kind of wider approach to looking at sustainability within the space sector. Scotland has a space strategy, and the sector's well established, and it's also got ambitious growth plans. But the strategy itself actually did make reference to the importance of sustainability, and that's where myself and Dasha and the team at Asher Agency come into play. As I say, we were appointed by Scottish Enterprise, which is the regional development agency in Scotland, and we were appointed to try to develop a sustainability net zero roadmap for the sector. So this was jointly prepared by ourselves. It presents the results of the roadmap, but it's important to highlight that the roadmap was actually building on the foundations and the work of Space Scotland's Environmental Task Force. So just moving on to the next slide, in terms of our approach to developing the roadmap. So Angela mentioned that it was very much industry-led, and it most definitely was. It comprised a review of international best practice research. So there was a programme of desk research where we're exploring how others had developed roadmaps and similar action plans in place. And it was also about the identification of transferable lessons. That was partly through desk research, but was also informed by the industry and stakeholder engagement. And I should just take this moment to thank all of our colleagues within the sector, both here in Scotland and internationally, because without their input into this, then it would have been very difficult for us to make sure that the roadmap was industry-led. Just moving on to one of the kind of first tasks within the work that we carried out in developing the roadmap, and one of the kind of underpinning tasks, actually, defining what we meant by space sustainability was really, really important for us, not only from the outset, but also to kind of have those conversations as part of the industry stakeholder engagement. We made reference to the United Nations, the Committee on Peaceful Users of Outer Space, and they have a definition which is on the screen at the moment. Based on our engagement with industry and taking into account the kind of Scottish perspective, we did tweak that definition slightly just so that it was fit for purpose for the needs of our roadmap. So the final definition that kind of guides the roadmap and the activities and the actions that we've set out within our work packages is on the screen. So I'll just take a moment just to kind of read through that. So the definition that we're working against is the long-term sustainability of space activities, both on ground and in orbit, and that's an important part to highlight, and is defined as the ability to maintain and improve the conduct of space activities indefinitely into the future in a manner that ensures continued access to the benefits of the exploration and the use of space for peaceful purposes, in order to meet the needs of the present generations while preserving Earth and outer space environment for future generations. Space sustainability also requires the promotion and use of environmental benefits of space data, and recognises the need for launch and in-orbit activities to be carried out in a responsible and, of course, a sustainable manner. So the aspects that are highlighted in green there is where we've tweaked the definition to meet the needs of our specific Scotland landscape. And just moving on to the key findings before we get into the detail of our roadmap and the actions that have been set out in there. So in terms of the key findings, it's important to highlight this is a unique opportunity to ensure that the formative space sector develops sustainably. There is a complex mix of technical, economic and political challenges at play here, and our roadmap has tried to take those into account. And one of the other key findings was that there is a lack of agreed upon, widely adopted metrics and targets at the moment for space sustainability. There is also a need for space sustainability guidelines, the focus on preserving Earth as opposed to protecting Earth for the needs of space-specific legislation. And really that's about getting kind of industry buy-in there. But of course, as always the case, there's also a need for structured guidance and funding to make a lot of this happen. I mean, Angela kicked things off by saying that we're all on the call today because we're all passionate and we all have an interest in it. But of course, everything requires funding in order to kind of action the things. And that's one of the aspects that have been set out in our roadmap, is the need to kind of align both from a kind of short, medium and long-term perspective and how we can actually achieve these things. And nonetheless, it requires transparency and evidence to demonstrate the sustainability, really to avoid greenwashing. And the final kind of key finding is that this is a huge opportunity, so there's a need to act now to preserve the space environment. And just moving on now into the roadmap itself. So the roadmap consists of 10 detailed work packages, and I'll let my colleague Dasha go into those in a bit more detail and provide a kind of high-level overview of the actions that are set out there.
Thank you, Ashley.
Dasha. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Ashley just mentioned, we have 10 detailed work packages, and each work package consists of actions detailedly described. You can download the roadmap and read all the details in section 5.3. But work packages generally are divided into 3 thematic areas. These are leadership, in orbit, and environment and net zero. Leadership work packages all focus on public commitments, on planning, on promotion of space sustainability on both national and international levels. In orbit work packages focus on in-orbit activities and encourage responsible spacecraft operations and space debris mitigation. And final category, environment and net zero, contains work packages that focus on understanding and mitigating the environmental impacts of the space sector. So all the work packages are divided into short and medium-term actions, which have to be achieved by 2022-2025, respectively. We also added long-term goals for both on-Earth activities and in-orbit activities, which have to be achieved by 2045. So having these work packages was one of the key differentiator of this work and of this roadmap. And this type of roadmap is believed to be a first of its kind globally. And we can see that Scotland has the opportunity to be a pioneer in space sustainability. And us in Scotland, being a close community lets us deliver things, not just to set the guidance, but also to work on delivery of actions set out in those work packages. So we're proud to say that we already work towards the real outputs, but also what we want to do is to get support and to be a catalyst of conversations like we will have here today, where these things and these subjects are discussed on an international stage, where we are bringing the community together and discuss all together this global issue. So yeah, driving space sustainability is the focus for us today, and we're happy to support the wider UK goals and the wider global goals in space sustainability. That's it from us today. Thanks for attention.
Angela, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't trying to avoid background noise. So I say thank you for the voice of Scotland, the view that has been coming from Scotland. But I think the key thing is today is part of the network of networks that we have, and the fact that we're speaking to CNES and to ISA and having this dialogue today, and also with the Paris Peace Forum, which is a phenomenal not-for-profit organization. I'm now going to hand over to Laurence, because we have to hear what are the French doing. It's very robust. You are a spacefaring nation for a long time, one of the leading in Europe. And so we hand over to you, Laurence, to share with us what your plans are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be able to share with you what has been an important piece of work that we have been doing for the last 2 years. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully you will have it. You tell me if it's working.
Yeah, we can see it. That's great.
Okay, good. So what I'm about to present to you is the CSR strategy we have developed in CNES. This has started right before the COVID. When we were actually thinking about, we have this exercise with our administrative supervisors, the Minister of Economy, and we have this exercise of discussing our roadmap, the CNES roadmap, with our administration. And when we were doing this, we thought that there will be a massive change between what has been our roadmap for the last 5 years with the one for the next 5 years, that sustainability and environmental and climate issues will become at the core of this new agreement we have with our administration. And therefore, we had to start and to implement a new roadmap specifically on sustainability. And that's what we have been doing at the same time as renegotiating our new contract with our administration. So we started to do that in 2020, and it took pretty much a year to be completely done. And I wanted to share with you, firstly, how we have made it. We have elaborated it rapidly. You can see on this slide. The first exercise we have done is to have a wide interview with our stakeholders to design this materiality analysis that you have on the screen, which shows what are the important aspects of sustainability that both ourselves as a space agency and our stakeholders, being our ecosystem, our economic ecosystem, but also our partners, all the organization we are working with. And this materiality analysis showed what we wanted to focus on. And therefore, on the right side of this slide, we organize all these different themes in 5 major issues. All these issues are linked with the way we think that through our missions, through our actions, we can contribute to the achievement of the various SDGs. That's why you have it on the slide. So our materiality analysis has been pretty much focused on how precisely for each of the SDGs we were able to contribute. Therefore, the CSS strategy we have not only focus on environmental issues or on economic issues, but also on social issues, which is very important because some action we might have concerning the preservation of environment and our environmental footprint might have consequences on, let's say, the quality of work and how some advantages the people working in CNES might have. So all this is very much interlinked, and we have conceived this roadmap considering all those aspects: social, environmental, and economics. So we have five issues, 5 themes in our roadmap. Some of them are very linked and close to what has been presented before by Scotland, very much linked with protection of outer space and some issue I will relate to in a few minutes, but also on other type of topics, and namely the first one, to be a responsible employer. We have a whole roadmap about how to be a responsible employer, how to deal with gender equality, for example, to prevent discrimination, and so on and so forth. And this is part of how, as a space agency, we consider our role to be part of a role in terms of social issues. So I'm not going to maybe spend too much time on this slide to start to talk about some issues that we have in common and the way we deal with it. And so the second issue we're dealing with in our roadmap is the sustainable and protecting space, how we, what kind of ambition we might have. So for each slide, I have presented you the ambition we have developed in our strategies, what kind of KPIs we've put in front of these ambitions, and an illustration, because this is as the same for you. You have an extensive roadmap with a work package and so on. And in CNES, we also have for each ambition, as you can see, a precise action which is linked to this ambition, who is going to deal with this ambition, what is the target, and when we might achieve it, and when we are now. What you have in front of you are extracts of the reporting we have made by the end of 2021. So there, on the year 2021, so it's the last one we have done. So we have we have quite strong ambition about this promotion of sustainable and protecting space, meaning focusing on access to space, autonomous access to space, which is very much linked to the French policy towards space, but also our inclusion within the ESA framework. And as you have been talking about debris, this is also the example I have put on the screen. Our engagement towards reduction and elimination of space debris generated by our mission, and the role we play at the French level for the respect of the law on space, because in France we have this law since 2008, which is very original and quite pioneering in this area, to make sure that every satellite we send into space is compliant with this law, preventing from the creation of debris. So we have all these other ambition about preventing situations of conflict and so on and so forth. I'm not going to read the whole slide, but then you have an idea of how we envision our role in terms of protection, sustainability in space. Then I can move to the next one. We also have a key issue on what is our role in terms of how we create added value within the ecosystem. CNES is an operator for France, and one of its role as an agency is to develop its economic ecosystem. So we want to foster sustainable growth of the French industry within the European context, and to develop partnerships, and all this within a sustainable framework, meaning that every action we develop to promote this ecosystem is taking into account some specifications about how this company is being a startup, for example, how does it take into its own business model some environmental and climate action, and even wider CSR policies. So for one of our role within the directorate of within the sustainable development directorate, one of our role is to make sure that in every directorate of CNES, every type of economic intervention we make, be it by putting money into companies or using French money and French money through our France 2030 system, a grant system, that all the money we give to some companies has been carefully studied, considering not only technological performance or innovation, but also concerning sustainable development. So that's why we have in our KPIs specifically commitment through public procurements, and we have completely renewed our policy, intern policy into public procurement, making sure that every contract we sign with companies in our value chain is taking into account at least one dimension, which is counting for 10 to 15% of the notation of the envisioned product or service. We take into account climate specification or environmental specification. This is what you have in this slide as an example, and Space Founder is one of our incubator that has been developed, and we have a heavy program to stress that aspect for the training and the different webinars and that we are giving to these startups, for example. The fourth issue we're dealing with within our strategy is linked to the reduction of our environmental footprint. It's a massive area that we are developing at the moment, because we have to organize, we're into the process of elaborating our net zero strategy, which is very heavy for us, as part of our work is of course located in French Guiana, and because the spaceport is administrated by the CNES, and it constitutes 60% of our GHG emissions for us. So it's very heavy, and we have to green the whole spaceport. So we have a lot of projects that are dealing with renewable energy. So we make sure that we disconnect from the actual system of electricity providing, which is 100% based on fossil fuels. We have this project for developing not only photovoltaic infrastructures, but also new infrastructures based on hydrogen. And that's a long-term project to green all the different ergols that are going to be used by our next spaceships. And to also provide cool and electricity, cooling system and electricity to the whole base through a green system. And this necessitates heavy investment, but luckily the ministerial conference, which ended yesterday, is going to help us, as I have learned yesterday evening. So this is a really good news because it's going to be of great help. So we have a really strong project on the net zero and sobriety as well. And we have also a whole program on biodiversity. I cannot detail it here, but just to let you know that the protection of biodiversity, especially in Guyana, but not only, or impact on biodiversity is also part of a strong commitment here, and especially in Toulouse, where we have more than 2,300 people working, and with very old facilities that has been built during the 70s. And we are renewing all this. So this is our fourth issue. Last but not least, we have also an important thing about how we deal with our downstream application and services to help territories, and this is very much linked with how the CNES is, through its international partnership, namely with the International Charter on Natural Disaster, that we have developed for the last 15 years, and how we help vulnerable territories all over the world through the good functioning of this international charter. And every time, you know, that there is more than almost 700 actions that have been done for the last 15 years through the international charter. So that's a very important role that we have in coordinating the whole activity of the international charter, but also how we use, how we develop projects with the territories in France or overseas, using space data and other type of in situ data to develop some service to fight against climate change and to adapt to climate change. And this is one of the role of the Space for Climate Observatory that we have developed for the last 3 years. And now we have 60 projects through the Space for Climate Observatory, which is dealing with urban heat, with agriculture, with epidemiology, with coastal with the elevation of the sea and its impact on coastal areas, and so on and so forth. And this is, we have KPIs in trying to show how much we go forward with using this space data and working with our ecosystem to help territories. I think I've been quite long. I'm gonna the last slide. So this is what we have achieved. Pretty much it's a resume of what I've just said for the different slides. I'm just going to go to the last one because it's quite important. We have a very heavy heavy reporting task with this. I want to underline it because developing CSR strategies on climate and all these other aspects, it means that we have an obligation of awareness and reporting through the general public. And we have here this here. We have our yearly integrated annual progress report. It's called integrated in the European sense, meaning that it's finance and it's sustainability. And you have the double page here dealing with what we have done through our roadmap in CSR. And we have implemented in this integrated report, not only for each theme that the French Space Agency is dealing with, telecommunication, defense, and so on. Every time we remind what our KPIs in sustainability in this area are achieved or not. And we also have an annual report specifically on the KPIs for administrative supervision authority, which integrates the same KPIs that we have developed for a sustainable roadmap. We have government reports as well through the Sustainable Government Initiative, that also ask us very specific KPIs on environment widely. It's mainly focused on environmental footprint. And I think through this, I'm done. I'm really sorry. I think I've been quite long.
No, that's no problem. I think to see the structure of what you're doing. Thank you for that. I'm sure it's raising, people their interest, but they'll also have some questions for you as well, sort of on that. But I think it's very comprehensive, and thank you for that. So I'm going to ask Andrea now to step in. What is Andrea, in your role? It's climate, right? And it's sustainable space. So setting the tone, and you've just come out of the ministerial meeting where I think we did quite well, right? I think we all did quite well. Europe is in the game, and it's associate countries. So please let us know your vision, your mission, the things that you want to see happening during your tenure, and over to you.
Thank you, Angela. It's really exciting to be here this afternoon with you, especially the very day after the council meeting at ministerial level of ESA. That has been a great success, I would say, considering the geopolitical situation of Europe, the problems that Europe is facing, and the increasing support of our member states, 22 member states, including UK, and I'm very pleased to underline this. It is amazing. It's amazing that we have been doing better than 3 years ago. So we have been having an increase in the total budget of the agency. And I would say that this time, the Ministerial Council has been on the side of sustainability, because many activities have been inspired by sustainability. We have an umbrella program which is called Space for a Green Future, which is not actually a program, but it is really an umbrella under which different activities are gathered. And those activities have got a lot of support from member states, from Earth observation, from the Digital Twin Earth initiative, from the activities on navigation and integrated application that are contributing to the benefit of society. The space is contributing to the services and application to the benefit of society and the sustainable development of society. We have got the approval of Solaris, which is a feasibility study to get solar power from space on Earth. And this is something that is very promising. If this is resulting in a positive outcome, this will really contribute to reduce the carbon footprint of the entire planet, because we are going to use solar energy directly from space with much more efficiency. So just to say that it's extremely exciting being here after all those decisions have been taken. And what about the roadmap of the European Space Agency? You know that we have been contributing to the roadmap for Scotland with very pleasure. So we have been exchanging during the last months with Scottish colleagues, and they know that the axis of the agency are across 3 main lines. So the first one is increasing what I was talking about before, so increasing the benefits of what we do for the society, so increasing the output of space systems and space missions to the benefit of society for the sustainable development of society, so in all the areas that I was mentioning before. The second axis is the sustainable development or the sustainability of the outer space, which is another enabling factor to continue to provide those kind of services that are to the benefit of society. So ESA, together with its member states, is very much committed in the preservation of the outer space. We have been developing technical guidelines. We have been applying technical guidelines to all our projects. And now the Director General is very committed to have a net zero space debris in place on ESA missions by 2030, which is quite an ambitious target, but we are on the good track, and we can get this result thanks also to the engagement of member states that have also funded during this ministerial a big part of what is called in-orbit servicing, that it's contributing for sure to maintaining the outer space clean, reusing, refueling, but also de-orbiting spacecrafts that are in the wrong position and are potentially dangerous for others. So we have this ADRIOS program, which is including one mission, which is called Clear Space 1, which is going to take place in 2026, which is going to actually remove a space debris, which is completely controlled today, but we want to use it as a demonstrator to show that it is possible having this kind of services in place for the future. And then the third pillar of what ESA is doing is decarbonizing or contributing to the improvement of the environmental impact of its own activities. And its own activities are not only the energy consumption of its sites and infrastructure, or reducing business travel, or making a more eco-friendly commuting among its sites and infrastructures, but it is also looking at the supply chain, looking at our industrial sector, because we want to work with them and developing more and more and fostering more and more green technologies, which is a bad word because it has a flavor of greenwashing, but let's say eco-friendly technologies, meaning that we want to apply systematically in all our technologies, LCA, life cycle assessment, and then eco-design and eco-conception techniques. And for doing that, we have to work with our industry. So for us, our industry is not only our supply chain, industry is really a partner for the European Space Agency. We are there to support them to increase and improve their competitiveness on the global market. And we strongly believe that this is a great opportunity for industry to, at the same time, make innovation and develop innovative solutions for space system products, technologies, and processes, and maintain and even increase their own competitiveness on the global market. Because we are pretty sure, and I will come to the last point that I would like to talk about, that also satellite operators, so also customer of our industry, besides institutional customers as space agency, but also commercial space customers, are very much committed to reduce the carbon footprint, and their carbon footprint is depending on the carbon footprint of the satellites and the spacecraft and the rockets that they are buying to put in orbit their satellites and deliver their services. So let me conclude, and then there will be for sure questions, with something that happened the day before the Council at ministerial level. Because the day before, last Monday, 21st of November, finally 23 organizations working in space, space agencies, industries, satellite operators, met together around a statement for a responsible space sector. This statement has been signed and adopted by these 23 organizations, which have already started working together more or less 1 year ago. But now they have an umbrella reach of principles, values, and common engagement to progress towards a more sustainable space sector. So we have actions that are already in place. We are working together on specific topics, decarbonization, responsible procurement, or LCA and eco-design, as I was mentioning before. But now there is this formal act that is committing those 23 organizations to progress towards a more responsible space sector. And this has been very significant that this event has taken place the day before of such an important council at ministerial level for sustainability in general. Thank you. You are muted, Angela.
I said fantastic, and I imagine people can go and read about that. Who signed up and what is it they've signed up to? That would be that'd be great. Yeah. So Jérôme, what do you make of all of this? You who is the, if you like, the voice of the citizen organization, and with particularly your net zero space program and the pledge that you ask companies to make. I mean, I will say to you, just listening, there's a couple of things, you know, data sharing. You know, everybody can collect their data sharing until we've got somewhere that the world actually shares. And that's sharing Earth observation data, but also sharing the data to understand where things are in space. That is one of the biggest barriers, right? And then the other is, for me, is I think is the underpinning science that we need to do going forward, you know, to understand all of this much better, much more minute, so that we're not getting carried away with the capability. So I'm going to hand it to you, Jérôme, and you tell us about your organization and what you'll be watching for and how you'll be measuring progress on this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Angela, and I'm very happy to speak after such a distinguished guest. And truly, I think, to the best of my knowledge, CNES and ESA are really leading the way on the matter of space sustainability at the moment. So happy to present a bit more what we are doing. We're indeed working on the let's say, the broader scope of the policy debate, as we are not a space operating entity on our end. So let me just share my screen shortly. So maybe a few words about the Paris Peace Forum, as we are not a space entity in the first place. So our organization is working to improve global governance from an agnostic perspective. So we're also working on cyberspace, on climate, on health issues, etc., and also on outer space, as we do with most shared environments and global commons. Our key DNA is that we are a political and diplomatic organization. So the idea is really to open the doors of the classical way of doing diplomacy to include non-state actors, especially companies, civil state organizations, but also public authorities and regulators, to have informal debates about the main challenges we face in the matter of global governance, especially on emerging technologies, and for sectors who either lacks regulation per se, or, and we think it's the case for outer space, lacks actual implementation of existing guidelines or best practices that we already know being able to be implemented. You just have a summary of the main activities we have, because it's always a bit blurred with the forum. So of course we have 3 sub-activities. The first one being the annual summit. So it happens a few weeks before, on November 11th and 12th, for the 5th edition of the forum this year. Along the year, we have 2 departments working. One is the projects department, which is working through a call for solutions, which enables us to showcase existing initiatives, either from international organizations, from the civil society, or from companies who are trying to tackle global challenges. And finally, there is the policy department, in which I am working. And for this policy department, we are following we are acting as secretariat for different multi-stakeholder initiatives who are trying to create political pressure, better norms and principles to manage those global commons. And in that framework, we have launched last year this Net Zero Space Initiative. And so I'm just here to give you a few words about what it is before, of course, opening the floor to questions. So the Net Zero Space Initiative is bringing us strictly in orbit, because we are really working on the sustainability of Earth orbital environment, and we are not connecting it at the moment with the role of outer space when it comes to ensuring a better climate and the fight against climate change on Earth. The Net Zero Space Initiative is an informal platform which is gathering now more than 50 actors from across the globe who are committed, first, to say that we need to better protect Earth orbital environment with a global perspective, and second, to take urgent action in the short term to do so. If we take a step back, the reason why we launched this initiative was after many interactions we had with space specialists, with governments, and with space entities who actually shared the same observation, let's say. First of all, that it was not really about creating new norms and principles, because the state of international law, but also the state of technical recommendations, of standards that we have, and best practices that were created either by space agencies or by international technical entities, but also by the industry, were sufficient. What we lack is, first, an actual implementation of those recommendations, and second, a better interoperability between the main specifying nations in the requirements they ask for the industry, and in their own coordination, especially, you mentioned it, Angela, just before, when it comes to transparency and data sharing to protect this complex environment, which is outer space. So we have this common declaration, and in the framework of the initiative, we developed several forms of activities. So on this slide, just to summarize, you have a summary of the sort of entities that we gather in this initiative. The main point and one of our key concern was really to bridge the gap, let's say, between the sort of consensus there is within the space community on the one end, and on the other end, the political level, policymakers and people who are not specialists of outer space, and who first will need to be convinced that, first of all, there is an environmental issue in orbit, that we actually need to take action to protect this complex environment. And reversely, it was also about the idea to, let's say, raise awareness within the space community that there is also a political component to this debate. And at the end of the day, as climate activists and many companies and civil society organizations did for climate debate on Earth 30 years ago, space entities and space specialists will need to actually raise their voices to say we actually need to take some actions to avoid, a very degraded orbital environment in the short term, which would have a lot of consequences for our activities on Earth. And to do so, the main point, and something we're really proud of, is that we have actors from across the globe, and as you see, also from China, from the US, from the Global South, and from Europe. So it's really to say that we have an international consensus on the matter, and now we need to take, some urgent step so that at least the main suffering nation would be agree on the goal and the metrics that we lack, as it was mentioned before by Ashley, if I remember correctly. Just a short slide to present you the different supporters we have. Among those, I'm also, of course, very happy to say and to announce, I think, because we are going to publish it tomorrow, that the Environmental Task Force from Scotland, led by Space Scotland, has agreed to support the Net Zero initiative in line with their recommendation 1.3.1, if I remember correctly. So we're really happy to have you on board among this great community. And I will just end, because the idea is not to speak too long about it, by the sort of activities we have in the framework of the initiative this year and beyond the declaration, which is about raising awareness and clarifying the consensus and what all supporters believe altogether, which means that we need to better protect Earth orbital environment. We've been developing several working groups and substantive work to actually build some policy recommendation in this multi-stakeholder format. It's a very, let's say, new way of doing such form of diplomatic negotiation, but it's usually very fruitful, and we can see it from other fields, including actually climate, but also from the cyber security debate. Even the UN are now working in the multi-stakeholder format, and it's actually quite productive. This year, we published 2 white papers, which contains both 12 policy recommendations, both for the short and the long term. The first one focusing on improving the interoperability of norms that nation can actually unilaterally take when it comes to protecting Earth orbital environment. We think that a small cooperation, an increased cooperation, but between a small number of spacefaring nations would actually already create sufficient political pressure to help discussion in the LTS 2.0 process at the UN to move forward in a positive manner, because the political state of the art, which actually brings international agreement, needs to be built. And in that, the space community truly have a role to do. So this first working group. And the second working group has been working a bit more precisely, and this was very interesting because it was truly about connecting the technical point of view and the political point of view. It was about the definition and the apprehension, but also the decision-making process related to the existence of a collision risk in orbit. It might seem as a very, very technical issue, something that only, brings capacity and capabilities questions and also technical expertise. But actually, at the end of the day, when you define your threshold and when you have competing national traditions, for instance, if you need or not to notify the public regulator, and if the public regulator has a unilateral right to impose on you a certain form of behavior, it changes the way you can actually collaborate with your counterpart, especially if it is international. So we've been working on that and proposing a few concrete recommendations to improve the process in the short term. So here it was just to say a few words about what we've been doing on outer space matters and what is this Net Zero initiative. For this second year, we are still working in the same format with different topics, which will be announced in a few moments. And so we are quite happy to continue growing the community, and now with the support of Space Scotland, so it should be a very interesting second year.
And that's you. Thank you. So I know people have been listening patiently. I haven't got an eye on the chat. Lena, Torsten, do we have any questions in the chat that we can bring to our panel?
Sure. Thank you very much, everyone, for your great contributions. Are great stuff. Yes, we have, of course, a very engaged audience because it's an engaged audience. We always have. So, Tom, very active today. He's a PhD from the University of Lapland. Here's a question that concerns both Scotland and France. Could you tell us more about the public policy process that led to the adaptation of your strategies? So a little bit from the inside. Who wants? We're looking for volunteers now on the panel. Yeah, Dasha.
Ashley, you
go.
Oh,
yeah,
I'll chip in.
we'll answer for Scotland. I'll start and saying that the roadmap was very well adopted by the industry because in our case, this was an industry-led initiative. This is something that industry requested, and through ETF, Environmental Task Force, which has 20 companies on board, and through Space Scotland, which is an umbrella body for Scottish space organisations, it was requested and developed with all the stakeholders. We consulted with industry, with stakeholders from other countries and major sustainability experts. So this was requested by the industry. That's why it's an interesting case, and that is why it is moving forward that well. Another thing we feel helps a lot is the connection of environmental efforts to government funding. So this also is something that we can showcase because Scottish enterprise have already, as a result of this roadmap work, have launched the first funding call, which is Space Data to Net Zero Economy, and there already are 12 winners, which will be announced soon. So this type of activity supports right behaviors and sustainable actions of different companies. So yeah, I feel this is how it is done in Scotland. Ashley, am I missing anything?
Yeah, no, the only other thing that I would add to it is you mentioned Scottish enterprise, but the kind of higher level Scottish government, they have highlighted sustainability as a key aspect within the overall space strategy for Scotland. And I think that just kind of emphasises the importance that's been placed on it within Scotland, and then building on that, the fact that it is very much industry-led and driven, and the fact that industry has supported us along the way in developing the roadmap as well, and work has already started to take place, given that we've only recently launched it, as it shows the level of commitment that exists here.
If I could come in just on a point, I mean, yes, it's come from the industry, and that's brilliant. In Scottish Enterprise, which is the Economic Development Agency, we're also involved in, for example, looking at how Norway creates a cluster. And one of the points that they were fascinated about is that we actually have a minister for space. You know, it's part of his portfolio and his remit, and he attends our quarterly meetings. You know, he comes with his team. He's fully briefed on what's going on. And, you know, for people who around the world might be watching, you know, Scotland has its own Parliament for certain subjects, of course, or certain what we call devolved capabilities. Other things, of course, are part of the UK-wide and Westminster base. But we do have a Minister for Space, and he's very, very connected, and investments that can be made. I think even the other thing, we're talking about, you know, there's this double play of there are issues to be solved. If you've got satellites that come through and deorbit and create gases that are not good, then you have to incentivize people. You have to take industry with you. You have to protect the growth of the sector. But if you're incentivized because you can get financial support to be able to find those novel new solutions, which are probably out there, and help to de-risk in making those developments. And I think that's really what is also part of this this strategy. I would encourage people to read it because I think it is really quite well set out. Anybody else want to come in on? Anyone?
Can you give us a French view on that? So how does the public policy process led to the adaptation at CNES?
Yeah, the process we have used, we have been we have been fostered by the strong input from our supervising administrative, a supervisor within the state, namely Minister of Research and Minister of Economy, that has helped us and asked us to develop a stronger strategy that is involving specific attention to our ecosystem and the new space more, especially because we've been dealing with our ecosystem for a long time, but this new economy ecosystem as well, new space ecosystem. And within this framework, the whole government is asking to public agencies to have a specific strategy on sustainability. We have very strong incentives. I've got the ministry not very far from my office, and they summon us on regular meeting to see what we're doing. So the pressure is quite strong, which is pretty good for us, because I think that without pressure, it's pretty difficult to make strong efforts, and specifically on the greening of processes, and because it puts some challenges on stakeholders and especially small companies to think about how they're going to organize their supply chain to make sure that they're not facing some specific issues on energy, but also to have they're facing some shortage of components as well, and how we deal with all this, how we help them through eco-conception, through life cycle analysis and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is that the pressure is quite strong, our ecosystem is quite demanding, and we have therefore we have organized a huge stakeholder consultation in order to be sure that we are answering those questions.
Thank you. Elena.
Thank you. Yeah. To move on to the next question, Andrew Fournette from Astrosat asks, how will NEST monitor the progress of their efforts to make their spaceport greener? Any French EU companies involved in that work? I'm sure some Scottish companies might be willing to help them with that kind of work.
The greening of the spaceport is a complex affair, very complex business, but it starts with an evaluation of what kind of energy we're using and how we are building new infrastructure in order to green all the spaceport. And for the moment, we have selected a few companies to work on that. We are working with the whole local ecosystem towards the use of hydrogen on the spaceports, for example. And this is still R&D because hydrogen is for the moment gray production locally, and we have to test how the pile is working, how all the electrolysis is working as well, because it's a tropical place. So we are working with the University of Guyana, University of Louvain. We are working with Air Liquide. So many companies are involved, and how we can use this hydrogen as well downstream for mobility use, for example. So we're also working with local people to see how we can retrofit some vehicles in order to use hydrogen. So that's for the hydrogen phase. For the methane, we are going to organize a call for an open call for projects in order to build the new infrastructure to produce biomethane, which will be used by not really by CNES, but it's going to be used by all the future companies who are going to launch from this spaceport, especially for reusable reusable space crafts and ships that is going to be developed in next years. So that's where we are. And into monitoring the energy, it's quite simple because we have a specific agreement with the local energy producer. So we know exactly what we spend and how green is the electron we're using, which is not at the moment. So that's how it's working for the moment.
Great. So we have another one from Tom about public-private partnerships. How are they ongoing, and do you have plans to measure their effectiveness in terms of sustainability and to integrate sustainability principles in them? I think that's a very broad question. Anyone want to chip in here on PPPs?
I maybe can take this one. So it is allowing me to make a more general consideration because ESA for sure is doing PPPs since a number of years, especially for activities that are very close to the market. So technologies that are close to the market, but also services and applications that are close to the market. So the entire undertaking of the agency is going towards responsible procurement. And this responsible procurement is assuming that there is a code of conduct that has to be adopted by companies working with ESA. This is for maybe the first product of the statement for a responsible space sector, which has been working during the last months and has produced this code of conduct that has to be applied to ESA contracts. Now ESA is going through the usual approval cycle that is involving the different committees and especially the Industrial Policy Committee. But this code of conduct is applying to everything. So each kind of contracts that are going to be placed by the agency, including those contracts which are ruled by a public-private partnership.
Great.
Okay, should we move to the next question? I guess so. So this one comes from Ruben Hassler. He asks, great to hear about keeping LEO and the congested orbits from getting worse. To meet the target of net zero space debris, how will you approach cleanup in the instance of a catastrophic failure of the type that generates a debris cloud? Thank you.
This is very specific, and I think it's making reference to the net zero space debris strategy that ESA has adopted. It's a very complicated matter, as you can imagine, and we are touching different sides of the same problem. Especially the question to me is addressing specific responsibilities that are possibly associated to the creation or the almost voluntary creation of space debris through the destruction of spacecraft in orbits. And these are well beyond the control of the agency. When ESA is talking about the net zero space debris by 2030, again, is referring to its own missions, meaning that when you apply all the technical requirements that are necessary to avoid space debris so far, there is a residual risk for space debris to be generated in any case, because there are residual risk of losing the control of the spacecraft or losing the control of its deorbiting. The net zero policy is addressing this specific part, which is the residual risk of losing the control of the spacecraft, engaging the responsibility of the constructor in removing what is not possible, actively removing what is not possible to be removed by construction. And this is the net zero space debris policy of the agency among its own missions. And this is something that we are deploying until 2030. Other aspects, for sure, are not under the responsibility of a technical body as the European Space Agency, even though we have 22 member states. So we can provide technical solutions. As I was telling before, active debris removal is one of them. But for sure, in these kind of cases, specific responsibility have been identified, and these are things that have to be dealt with in the international forum that we all know, United Nations and others, because this is something very serious and it is involving states which are responsible for actions.
Andrea, we have another question for you, which I think is very, very interesting. Is there a strategy so this statement for a responsible space sector can be scaled?
If the question means scaled to a different size of actors, I would say that this is already embedded in the statement. The statement is including very high-level values and principles that are shared by the signatories, and a simple engagement, which is working together and collaborate to the implementation of that vision and to go along the principles that are included in the statement, which means that each one is playing his role according to his own capacity. We have currently, among the 23 organizations, we have one association, which is the SMA for Space, which has signed the statement on behalf of its 800 associates, which are all small and medium enterprises across Europe, which means that this is already de facto scaled or scalable.
Great.
Another question from Tom, addressed to Jérôme. How did you manage to have all these supporters, including from countries such as China? And are you planning to include all ESA members one day?
Well, thank you for the question. So first of all, how did we manage to have those actors? I would say that precisely because we are not only on space issues and we have a strong connection to diplomatic channels. So especially for countries as China, where I would say the size and presence of the government is quite developed in all the sphere of the society, it's important to have this connection. Second, the reason why we have these actors is because we settle governance issues and not directly a space or technical matter. Actually connecting with one of the previous questions on the event of a catastrophic failure in orbit, our storytelling and the way we present it is that we precisely want to avoid this situation. And precisely because not one actor has the capacities to face it, we need a minimum level of cooperation between everyone. And actually Chinese or American actors, which, I mean, several of them poses very strong problems when it comes to space sustainability, are the first to consider that they have a direct interest, including when they are on the government branches, even military branches, to protect the state of Earth orbits, because critical and strategic assets depends on their end, depends on the sustainable state of the Earth orbit. And during last edition of the Paris Peace Forum, we had a track 2 discussion between precisely Chinese and American military, civilian, and industry actors to see how they could cooperate a bit more when it came to sharing data, considering limitations on both ends. When it comes to including ESA and European actors, of course. So first of all, we have a lot of European actors that are funding supporters. CNES, Arianespace, or Eutelsat, for instance, are funding supporters of the initiative. They were among the 11 initial entities that launched it with us during the 4th edition of the PPF in 2021. For ESA, for the EU, we have open channels of communication and we are actively discussing. It's of course a bit more long and a bit more difficult for them. So first of all, for obvious institutional constraints, because ESA or the EU are international organizations, so it's much more difficult to get the support even for a soft law agreement than an industry member or even a space agency which is national. And because we have different and often conflicting, let's say, tradition or way of apprehending the international debate. European actors are much more, I would say, traditional or institutional, and would like not to develop and complexify the state of the international debate. Actually, I see in a question below the wording forum shopping, and I would say that actually European actors usually want, and we can hear actually that fear, to avoid the multiplication of fora to discuss such matters and trying to stick by the international system, which is the UN and UN COPIOS. And we mostly agree with that. We just want to raise the point that we need some informal gathering to put the sufficient political pressure to make sure that the UN will deliver and will not be confiscated by non-cooperating actors that would actually focus on the agenda for 2 years before actually discussing the substance.
Great. As I have to look at our timing, Angela, with your permission, I would.
Well, I was going to ask just to very quickly go around, just last statements by everyone. What is there on their wish list? What's keeping them awake, and what is their hottest point that they would like? And I'll do it in order, sort of. Daria, if you start, what is your wish? What is on your wish list? Daria, maybe, and Ashley for Scotland. What is it you would like to see going forward?
Well, definitely, as said before, something that we would like to see more is international conversations, collaborations, learning best practices. This is what we're here for, and this is what we hope the sustainability roadmap for Scotland will catalyze, because we are very willing to adopt best practices and share what we have. So yeah, definitely, this is on our wish list. Ashley?
Yeah, no, just to build on that, I think obviously we put a lot of work in developing the roadmap, and we've already highlighted the success already of actions being undertaken in such a short space of time, but just more traction on that. Let's deliver the roadmap for Scotland, and we can do that by, as Daria says, collaborating with partners.
Exactly. So I'm going to go back in the same order. Laurence, what is
my wish close before Christmas? What would I wish for? Well, definitely what I wish for is that our supply chain and our value chain goes green. I think we have right after the COP27, the only thing we can hope is that together in partnership in France and within either country at the European level, that we manage to green all our processes, we manage to use new ergols, that we manage to produce them greenly, and that we manage to stop producing debris that are polluting the outer space, which is a common good.
Brilliant. Thank you. Andrea?
Yes, very much echoing what has been said. The three things. The first one is continuing strong collaboration, because without collaboration within the space ecosystem, it's not possible to make any type of progress in any of the topics that we have discussed today. The second one is fostering the innovation on those topics, because through innovation we can really give a support to the decarbonization of the sector, to the preservation of outer space. So innovative solutions are fundamental, and I want to recall once again solar power, because this is something very exciting. And the third one is responsibility, because again, without individual responsibility at company level, at organization level, country level, but also at personal level, I think that we cannot progress very much.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And Jérôme?
Well, I would connect with the previous wording for increased collaboration, and on my end, personally, I would say to see in the short term the same level of political and larger interest of the space community for sustainability in space than for sustainability of space activities.
I'm with you there, friend.
Hopefully.
And we talked, I mean, we did talk, many of us talked as we came on, that there will be money. We don't know everything, and we must be cautious when we're making this progress. You know, we don't know the effects on the atmospheres around Earth, what all of this activity, you know, going on. It sounds great to be doing it. But I think, Andrea, you said something to me about we want to know, and we will invest to know. And that was very reassuring for me, because I stay up at night thinking about this, as probably everybody who's registered to come on this does as well. So, you know, it does. I thank you all for you know, coming together around the Scottish sustainable strategy and roadmap, and for being friends of Scotland, being partners in this, reaching across, you know, because space does not have those boundaries, and participating today so willingly. And we will continue the dialogue. And that's all I really have to say. And I will note, Scotland, I did see it. Scotland has signed the pledge of the net zero space, which is a fantastic thing for us to have achieved as well. So back to you, Torsten, and to Elena.
All right, thank you, Angela, and to all of your guests. Before we say goodbye, let me remind you of our upcoming events. On the 28th of November at 2 p.m., we're hosting the next Space Arbitration Association event on the question, can we arbitrate harmful interference disputes? And Laura Zelensky will talk with the who's who of scholars, Tanya Masson-Zwan, Maulena Hoffman, Ruth Pritchard Kelly, and Alexandre Vallée. On the 29th, so very exciting. On the 29th of November at 4 p.m., join Torsten at our Space Café 33 Minutes with Marco Ferrazzani on the outcomes of the ESA ministerial meeting. On the 30th of November at 4 p.m., so we have our Space Café Israel by Meidat Pariente with Ran Livne of ImageSat. And later on that same day at 6 p.m., we're having our Space Café Italy by Dr. Emma Gatti in a conversation with nobody else than the president of the Italian Space Agency, Giorgio Saccoccia. And on the 1st of December at 8 p.m., join us in the 59th Space Bar by Astro Agency. And on the 6th of December at 4 p.m., we have our Space Café 33 Minutes live from Scotland. So watch out because Torsten is going to be in the country. And on the 8th of December at 5 p.m., we're going to have our Space Café Brazil by Ian Grosner. So as always, all events are going to be online on Eventbrite, and we would like to hear your feedback. So please check in with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And don't forget to sign up for daily and bi-weekly newsletters. And if you'd like to treat yourselves to something special, become a Space Watcher today or help us in the supporter program. And thank you all very much for your interest today. Thank you, Angela, for hosting this inspiring talk. And thanks again to the entire team behind the scenes for doing this great job week by week again. I hope you will all stay safe and healthy. And thank you for joining us. I hope to see you in the next weeks. In the meantime, visit our website and follow us on social media. And don't forget, become a Space Watcher. Bye.